Let's be honest, when you think of Sweden, you think of sensible things. Flat-pack furniture that tests your marriage, Volvos that are safer than a padded room, and a pop group called ABBA. You do not, generally speaking, think of world-beating, giant-slaying fighter jets, and for a very long time, nobody else did either. The Saab Gripen was, for most of its early life, the aviation equivalent of a quiet kid sitting at the back of the classroom. Nobody paid it any attention. The Americans had their F-16s, F-18s, the Russians had their flankers, and the Europeans were busy building the enormously expensive and complicated Eurofighter. Sweden, they were just Sweden, making a little jet for themselves. How cute. The prevailing wisdom in the smoky back rooms of military procurement was simple. Bigger is better. The world of fighter jets in the late 20th century was a private club, a very exclusive, very expensive club dominated by a few key players. On one side you had the United States, churning out legendary aircraft like the F-15 Eagle and the F-16 Fighting Falcon. These weren't just planes, symbols of American power, technological titans bristling with weapons backed by a defense budget larger than the economy of most countries. On the other side, the Soviet Union, its menacing, hugely capable Sukhoi fighters and the agile MiG fighters. These were the heavyweights, undisputed champions of the sky. Then Europe, pooling resources to build the Eurofighter Typhoon, a magnificent, eye-wateringly expensive beast. Into this arena, the Gripen looked ridiculous. The experts, the analysts, the armchair generals. So, if the Gripen was smaller, had fewer engines and carried less stuff, what on earth was the point of it? The answer is simple. It was clever. Insanely, brilliantly clever. The Swedes couldn't afford the bigger is better race, so they played a different game. They asked a different question, not how can we build a bigger fighter, but how can we build a smarter fighter that does exactly what we need at a price that won't force us to sell the royal palace. This led to a design philosophy completely alien to major powers. Focus, efficiency. Focus, ease of maintenance. Focus, tactical flexibility. First, the brain. The Gripen was designed from the ground up around its software. One of the most bonkers requirements the Swedish Air Force gave to Saab was this. The Gripen had to be able to operate from anywhere, not just from pristine, well-defended air bases, because they knew that in a war, those would be the first things to be turned into smoking craters. No, the Gripen had to be able to take off and land on short, damaged runways, and even sections of ordinary public road. This wasn't a nice-to-have feature. It was a core part of Sweden's national defense strategy. The idea was to disperse the Air Force across the country, making it impossible for an enemy to wipe it out with a single massive strike. The jets would hide in the forest and pop out to use a nearby road as a runway. To make this possible, the Gripen was built tough. It has a beefy undercarriage, far stronger than you'd expect on a jet of its size, designed to handle the punishment of rough surfaces. The air intakes are positioned high up on the fuselage, reducing the risk of the engine sucking in rocks or a surprised badger from a poorly swept road. The pilot has a special display mode that gives them precise guidance for landing on a narrow strip just 800 meters long and 9 meters wide. For years, the doubters had their way. The Gripen was a road warrior, a niche defender. How would it fare against the best in a real dogfight? The answer came in the Nevada desert. Exercise Red Flag is the world's most prestigious air combat exercise. It's where the top guns prove their mettle. It's brutal. A complex, multi-week war game. You face the most advanced American aircraft, F-15S, F-16S, F-22 Raptors, flown by highly trained aggressor pilots whose only job is to shoot you down. It's the ultimate test. When Sweden first sent Gripens to Red Flag, expectations were low. Many saw it as a lamb led to slaughter. What happened next sent a shockwave. There are certain moves in the world of aviation that are pure, unadulterated theatre. They're designed to make crowds gasp. For decades, the undisputed king was the Pugachev's Cobra, perfected by Russian test pilots in Su-27S. It involves pulling the nose up to vertical and even beyond while still moving forward. Considered impossible for a Western fighter, especially a small, single-engine Delta Canard like the Gripen. Aerodynamics were all wrong, or so they said, lacked the raw power. Then at an airshow, a Swedish pilot decided to have a go. Collective jaw on the floor disbelief, performed a perfect Cobra. The pilot eased the jet into the maneuver. Then, like a gymnast, it dipped its nose and flew away. If you really want to understand what makes the Gripen so terrifying to fly against, you have to look beyond the airframe and the engine. You have to look at its nervous system, its electronic warfare suite. In modern air combat, shooting down an enemy is less about bullets and more about electrons, sensors, data links jamming. The winner is often the one who sees and understands the battlefield best. The latest version of the Gripen, the Gripen E, has what some pilots have described as a God mode button. It is, quite simply, the most advanced electronic warfare system ever fitted to a fighter jet. Older jets have EW systems that are essentially bolted on as an afterthought. The Gripen E was designed around its EW suite from the very beginning. It has more than 10 dedicated sensors spread all around the airframe, giving the pilot a complete 360-degree sphere of awareness. It can detect, classify. The story of the Gripen is a powerful lesson that the biggest and most expensive tool is not always the best one for the job. The world's air forces were, for a long time, locked in a mindset that equated power with size and cost. The Americans built the F-22 Raptor, an incredible stealth fighter that is arguably the most dominant air-to-air combat machine ever created. It's also so expensive that they could only afford to build 187 of them, and its operating costs are astronomical. The Europeans built the Typhoon, but one that requires a huge ground crew and a vast logistics tail to keep it flying. They built hammers. Saab, on the other hand, built a scalpel. The Gripen was never meant to outmuscle a Raptor or outrun a Typhoon in a straight line. It was designed to outthink them. This philosophy is evident in every aspect of its design. Its low operating cost means that pilots can actually afford to fly it. A pilot with 300 hours a year in a Gripen is going to be far more lethal than a pilot with 150 hours a year in a more capable but more expensive jet. So, what is the lasting impact of this plucky Swedish jet? Today, on August 26, 2025, the Gripen is more relevant than ever. The latest version, the Gripen E, is entering service, equipped with that frankly terrifying electronic warfare suite, a more powerful engine, and the ability to carry an even greater array of smart weapons. It continues to be a hot seller on the international market, with countries looking for maximum bang for their buck. In a world of increasing geopolitical tension and constrained defense budgets, the Gripen's formula of affordable excellence has become incredibly attractive. It has carved out a permanent and respected place for itself. The bigger lesson, however, is the one learned by other countries and manufacturers. It demonstrated that there was a huge market for aircraft that weren't designed for a hypothetical superpower conflict. It proved that a focus on life cycle costs, ease of maintenance and software upgradability was not just a selling point but a strategic necessity. They built a fighter for the real world, a world of budgets, bad weather and imperfect runways.